Poor girl begs billionaire to let her work at his company in exchange for food. What he does leaves everyone in shock. The Rowan Industries building cut through the sky like a blade of glass and steel. 23 floors of calculated elegance, each polished surface reflecting the cold morning light. In the lobby, the white marble mirrored the hurried steps of executives, while the sound of heels echoed in a mechanical, predictable rhythm. Rowan Marlowe stepped out of his private elevator at 7:15, as always. His Italian suit cost more than most people's monthly salary, and he knew it. At 32, he had built a financial empire with the same coldness he used to choose his ties, without hesitation, without sentimentality. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman named Margaret, gave a discreet nod. He answered with an even more discreet nod. Words were unnecessary. She knew he didn't want to be disturbed before 8, that his coffee should be on his desk at 7:30, and that any interruption had better have a good reason. Rowan was almost at the revolving door when he saw her. A tiny little girl, maybe 8 years old, was standing in the middle of the lobby as if she had sprouted from the floor. Her brown hair was messy, and her clothes, a faded pink t-shirt and jeans with stains, looked like they had seen better days. She held a small plastic bag in her hands, clutching it to her chest as if it were a treasure. "Please, sir." Her voice trembled a little, but she lifted her chin. "Are you the owner of this place?" Rowan stopped. In the 15 years since he had founded the company, no one had ever entered the building like this. The security system was impeccable. How on earth had a child gotten past the doormen? "I am." His voice came out drier than usual. "And you're not supposed to be here." "I know I'm not." She took a step forward, her eyes shining with a mix of desperation and hope. "But I was thinking, please, don't you need someone to clean? I work really well. I swear I'll clean everything up nicely, without breaking anything." Margaret rose from her desk, clearly alarmed. Rowan motioned for her to stay where she was. For some reason, he was curious. "Clean?" He arched an eyebrow. "We have a professional cleaning crew." "I know you do." The girl looked around the lobby, admiring the gleaming marble and crystal chandeliers. Then she turned her eyes back to him, and there was a desperate plea in them. "But I could do some extra work. Just for today, just this once, in exchange for food, or money to buy food. Please." The last part was said with a brutal honesty that made something stir in Rowan's chest. He looked at her face more closely. There was a determination there that didn't match her age, but there was also something else, a vulnerability she was trying to hide. "How old are you?" 8. "And where are your parents?" The girl lowered her eyes for a moment. "I don't have parents right now." Rowan could feel Margaret waiting for a reaction. She probably expected him to call security or maybe social services. It was what any sensible person would do. But there was something about this child that intrigued him. A mix of desperation and pride that he recognized, even if he didn't want to admit it. "What's your name?" "Nell." "Nell." He repeated the name, testing how it sounded. "And you think you can clean this lobby?" Her eyes lit up as if he had offered her diamonds. "Yes, I can. I have cloths here in my bag, and I know how to use the cleaning products right. I can make the windows shine so much you'll be able to see yourself in them." For a fraction of a second, Rowan almost smiled. Almost. Instead, he looked at Margaret and nodded. "Margaret, get her the necessary supplies and supervise her work." "Mr. Marlowe, are you sure?" "I am." His voice cut off any objection. "When she's done, give her $50. Nell's eyes widened. $30? "I think that's fair." "Yes, it is," she replied so quickly she almost choked. "Thank you so much, sir. I'll do the best job of my life." Rowan nodded and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, he could see Margaret guiding Nell toward the cleaning supply closet. The girl was practically bouncing with joy. On the 23rd floor, Rowan settled at his mahogany desk and tried to focus on the monthly reports, but his mind kept going back to the scene in the lobby. There was something unsettling about that encounter, something he couldn't quite identify. Maybe it was the way she had asked for work instead of a handout. Or maybe it was that unwavering determination in her eyes, as if she were used to fighting for every small victory. He shook his head and returned to the numbers on the screen. He didn't have time to philosophize about lost children. He had a company to run, profits to maximize, investors to satisfy. But when Margaret called 2 hours later to inform him that the job was finished, he found himself asking, "How did she do?" "Perfectly, sir. I've never seen the lobby so clean. She even managed to get out a few stains that our regular team hadn't noticed. And the money. I've already given it to her. She thanked me about 10 times and said she was going to buy food for the whole week." Rowan hung up the phone and went back to work, or tried to. But there was a strange discomfort settling somewhere between his ribs, a feeling he couldn't name or make disappear. When he left the building at the end of the day, the lobby was impeccable. There was no sign that an 8-year-old girl had spent hours there, transforming every surface into a perfect mirror. It was as if she had never existed, except for that strange feeling that continued to bother him. Rowan got into his BMW and drove home, trying to forget determined eyes and a smile that was worth $50. But even when he arrived at his silent, elegant apartment overlooking the entire city, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. And he hated change. The sun had barely risen when Rowan woke up. His 30th floor apartment offered a privileged view of the city as it began to stir. Tiny cars glided along the avenues. Ant-sized people walked hurriedly on the sidewalks. He watched it all with distance, like someone watching a silent movie. His morning ritual was as precise as a Swiss watch. An exactly 8-minute shower, black coffee, no sugar, an impeccably pressed suit. Italian shoes shined the night before. A successful businessman leaves nothing to chance. But today, as he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, Rowan noticed something strange in his own eyes, a restlessness that wasn't there yesterday. The image of the girl from the lobby kept coming back to his mind. That determination, that dignity. "Nonsense," he muttered to himself, pushing the thought away. At 7:15 sharp, like every day for the past 6 years, the private elevator dropped him off on the ground floor of Rowan Industries. And that's when he saw her. Nell was standing in the exact same spot as the day before, as if she had never left. The same plastic bag in her small hands, but today there was something different, a smile. A smile so big, so full of hope, that for a moment Rowan felt a tightness in his chest. When she spotted him, she waved enthusiastically, as if they were old friends. "Good morning, sir. I came to work again." Rowan stopped in the middle of the lobby. He felt the muscles in his back tense automatically, as they did when he was about to close a difficult deal. Margaret, the receptionist, looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, clearly unsure how to react to the situation. "Nell," his voice came out harsher than he intended. "What are you doing here?" "I came to clean." She held up the bag as if it were a trophy. Her eyes shone with a mixture of pride and expectation. "I thought maybe you'd need me again today. I can do the bathrooms too if you want. I know how to clean toilets really well." The sincerity of those words hit Rowan like a punch to the gut. He looked around, noticing that some employees who were arriving were starting to watch the scene with curiosity. "No." The word came out sharp, harder than he had planned. "You can't stay here." Nell's smile wavered, but it didn't disappear completely. There was a persistence in her that was almost painful to witness. "But I did a good job yesterday, didn't I? Mrs. Margaret said it was very clean." "It was," Rowan admitted, crossing his arms and assuming the posture his competitors feared in negotiations. "But yesterday was an exception. This is no place for a child." The last words seemed to hit Nell like a slap. The smile finally vanished. She looked at the floor, then at him, then at the floor again. Her small fingers squeezed the handle of the plastic bag so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "I understand." Her voice was just a whisper now. "Sorry to bother you." And that was it. There were no tears, no drama, no tantrum. She simply accepted the rejection as if she were used to it. She turned her back and walked toward the door, her small shoulders visibly slumped, as if carrying an invisible weight. Rowan stood in the middle of the lobby, watching the tiny figure walk away. Something tightened in his chest, a strange, uncomfortable feeling he couldn't name and didn't want to examine. He shook his head and headed for the elevator, annoyed with himself for even thinking about it. "Mr. Marlowe." Margaret's voice reached him as he was almost at the elevator door. What? He didn't turn around. She looked hungry. Rowan didn't answer. The elevator doors closed, and he ascended to the 23rd floor, trying to forget sad eyes and slumped shoulders that seemed too small to carry so much weight. But he couldn't. During the 8 o'clock meeting, he found himself looking out the window, his eyes subconsciously searching for a small figure on the street below. The vice president of marketing had to repeat a question twice before Rowan registered it. At 10, he cancelled an important call with Japanese investors, citing an urgent commitment that had come up at the last minute. There was no commitment, just a restlessness that wouldn't let him concentrate. At lunch, sitting in his favorite restaurant overlooking Central Park, he barely touched his food. The waiter, who had known him for years, asked if there was something wrong with the dish. There wasn't. The problem was elsewhere. At 3 in the afternoon, he found himself drawing meaningless circles in the margin of a multi-million-dollar contract. The serious face of the CFO indicated that he had asked a question Rowan hadn't heard. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" The CFO frowned, concerned. In 15 years, no one had ever seen Rowan Marlowe distracted during a business meeting. At 5:30, as he was organizing his documents to leave, Margaret knocked on his office door. She entered without waiting for an answer, something she never did. "May I speak with you, sir?" Quickly, Rowan didn't look up from his papers. "It's about the girl, Nell." Margaret closed the door behind her, her expression serious. "Sir, I know it's none of my business, but what?" Rowan finally looked at her. "She came back at lunchtime." Margaret seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "She didn't come into the building, she just stayed outside, watching." Rowan felt the tightness in his chest intensify. And when I went out to buy my sandwich, she was sitting on the sidewalk. I asked if she was okay, and she said yes, that she was just resting a bit." Margaret hesitated, as if weighing whether she should continue. Rowan realized he was holding his breath. "Margaret, get to the point." "Sir, I don't think she has anywhere to go." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Rowan looked at Margaret, then at the window, then at his own hands, which were now gripping a pencil with unnecessary force. "That's not my problem." His voice sounded empty even to his own ears. "I know it's not, sir, but nothing." Rowan stood up abruptly and grabbed his jacket. "She is not my responsibility." Margaret nodded silently and left the office. There was nothing more to say. Rowan arranged the papers on his desk with stiff movements, trying to ignore the annoying voice in his head that said he was being a first-class idiot. The truth was that Nell had disturbed something inside him, something he preferred to leave dormant. A memory, perhaps, an echo from another life, another time. 20 minutes later, Rowan descended in the elevator to the ground floor. The lobby was empty and impeccable, with no trace of the presence of an 8-year-old girl who, a few hours earlier, had been there, asking for just one chance. Night had fallen over the city. The air was cool, and lights were beginning to turn on everywhere, transforming the buildings into gigantic jewel boxes. Rowan walked to his black BMW parked in the reserved spot with his name on it. He was putting the key in the lock when he heard a noise, a metallic noise like cans clanking against each other. He turned his head in the direction of the sound and saw, across the street, a small figure crouched next to the dumpsters. His heart involuntarily sped up. Nell was there, rummaging through the trash with her small hands. For a moment, Rowan was paralyzed, unable to move or look away. Then, without thinking about what he was doing, he crossed the street almost at a run, ignoring the angry honk of a taxi that had to brake sharply. "Nell." She turned, startled like a cornered wild animal. She had dirt smudges on her face and hands. Her hair was messier than it had been that morning. When she saw him, she quickly tried to hide something behind her back. "Hi, sir." Her voice was a thread, but there was still dignity in it. "What are you doing?" The question was stupid, he knew. It was obvious what she was doing. Nell looked at the ground, ashamed. "Nothing." "Nell," Rowan's voice came out softer, almost gentle. "Show me what you have there." Reluctantly, as if admitting a crime, she brought her hands forward. She was holding half a sandwich wrapped in crumpled aluminum foil, clearly taken from the trash. The bread was already showing signs of mold on the edges. I was hungry. Her voice was just a whisper now. I didn't find anything today. The tightness in Rowan's chest turned into something physical, a real pain that made him take a deep breath. He knelt beside her, not caring that his $5,000 pants were touching the filthy alley floor. "Nell, where do you live?" "Nowhere." She wouldn't look at him. "What do you mean, nowhere?" She shrugged, a small, resigned gesture, as if she were talking about the weather and not about being homeless. "The house caught fire. I got out. They didn't. They who? My parents." The words came out simply, without drama or self-pity, as if she were reporting a daily fact. "It's been 2 weeks." Rowan felt the world stop for an instant. 2 weeks. "Yeah?" Nell finally looked at him. "That's why I came to work at your company yesterday. I need to buy food, you know." There was an impeccable logic to that explanation, a practical need that left no room for sentimentality. Rowan looked at her face, dirty, thin, yet still determined. There was a strength there he didn't see in many adults, a resilience that shouldn't exist in an 8-year-old child, a strength born of necessity and survival. "Come on." Rowan stood up and held out his hand. "Let's get something to eat." Her eyes widened with suspicion. "But you said..." "Forget what I said." He kept his hand extended, a silent offer. Nell looked at his hand for a long moment, as if pondering whether this was real or some kind of trick. Then, slowly, like someone testing the water temperature before getting in, she placed her small, dirty hand in his. The trust in that simple gesture hit Rowan like a wave. For an instant, he didn't know what to say. They crossed the street in silence and entered the first diner they found, a simple place with formica tables and plastic benches. It wasn't the kind of establishment Rowan frequented, but at that moment it seemed perfect. He ordered a hamburger, fries, and a soda for her, and a black coffee for himself. They sat at a table in the back, away from the windows and curious eyes. When the food arrived, Nell attacked the hamburger as if she hadn't eaten in days. It was likely she hadn't. Her small hands held the sandwich tightly, as if someone might try to steal it at any moment. "Slow down." Rowan pushed the soda closer to her. "You'll make yourself sick." She nodded, but continued eating quickly. When she finished the hamburger, she started eating the fries one by one, saving a few in her pocket when she thought he wasn't looking. "You can eat it all," Rowan said softly. "I can order more if you want." Nell stopped, surprised, and then continued eating, but now a little more slowly. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked at him with a gratitude so genuine it was almost painful to see. "Thank you. Where have you been sleeping?" Rowan tried to keep his voice neutral, as if the answer didn't matter that much. "Here and there." She shrugged again, that gesture that seemed to say everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. "There are some places you can hide. There's a dry spot under the bridge. And behind the supermarket, there are some big boxes." Rowan ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the situation. An 8-year-old girl, an orphan, with no family, no home, living on the streets for 2 weeks. Eating garbage, sleeping in boxes. It was a reality so distant from his own that it seemed almost unreal. It was impossible. It was unacceptable. "How you can't stay on the street?" The words came out firmer than he intended. "I can take care of myself." There was a fragile pride in that statement. "No, you can't." Rowan leaned over the table. "It's dangerous. You're only 8 years old." "I know." Nell looked out the diner window at the darkening night outside. "But I don't have a choice, do I?" The simplicity of that realization fell on Rowan like a weight. He was silent for a long moment, fighting an internal battle. All logic, all reason, all common sense told him to call social services, to let the professionals handle the situation. It was the correct procedure. It was what any sensible person would do. But there was something in those eyes, a vulnerability disguised as courage, a fragility masked by strength, that touched him in a way he couldn't explain even to himself. "Come with me." The words came out before he could censor them. "Where to?" Nell asked, suspicious. "To my place." Rowan could hardly believe what he was saying. Just until I figure out what to do. Until we find a solution. Nell looked at him as if he had just announced he was taking her to the moon. Really? Really? Rowan stood up and left enough money to pay for 10 meals like that one. But it's temporary, understand? Just until we figure out a better solution. A suitable place for you. She nodded vigorously, her face lit by a hope so fragile it seemed it could break at the slightest touch. I understand. Thank you so much, Mr. Rowan. He didn't remember telling her his first name. They left the diner together, a tall man in an Italian suit walking beside a small, dirty girl, and Rowan wondered if he wasn't making the biggest mistake of his life. Maybe he was. He probably was. But when he looked down and saw Nell walking beside him, small but determined, her eyes fixed on the path ahead like someone used to facing whatever comes, he knew he had no choice. At least, not for him. Rowan woke up with the sunlight hitting his face. For a moment, he lay there looking at the ceiling, trying to understand why he felt something was different. Then he remembered. The girl. Nell was sleeping in the guest room. He got up and put on his silk robe. A glance at the clock. 6:30 in the morning. He still had time to sort things out before going to the office. He needed to call social services, explain the situation, make it clear that it was only temporary. He made coffee and was surprised to realize he was making it for two. He put milk and sugar in an extra cup, something he never did. Rowan drank his coffee black, with nothing in it. 7 o'clock. Strange that Nell hadn't appeared yet. The night before, she had fallen asleep almost instantly when he put her in the huge bed in the guest room. She looked so small among the Egyptian cotton sheets. Maybe she was shy or scared. He walked down the hall to the room and knocked lightly on the door. No answer. He knocked again, a little harder. Nell, are you awake? Silence. A thread of worry began to form in his chest. He turned the doorknob and slowly opened the door. Nell was curled up in the sheets, her face red and shiny with sweat. She was breathing quickly and shallowly, and when Rowan got closer, he saw that she was trembling slightly. Nell. He touched her forehead and recoiled in shock. She was burning with fever. An irrational panic took hold of him. He shook her gently by the shoulder. Nell, wake up. You're not well. She opened her eyes, but she didn't seem to recognize him. Her pupils were dilated, and her gaze was unfocused. Mommy! The voice was a hoarse whisper. It's so hot. Rowan felt his heart race. He knew nothing about sick children. He had never taken care of anyone but himself. Calm down. It's going to be okay. The words came out automatically, but he wasn't sure if they were true. With trembling hands, he grabbed his cell phone and dialed his private doctor. Dr. Lowenthal only served a select clientele and charged a fortune for house calls. But money was the least of Rowan's worries at that moment. Come now. It's an emergency. While he waited, Rowan tried to get Nell to drink some water. She coughed and turned her face away. He wiped her forehead with a damp cloth, unsure if he was helping or making things worse. Her breathing seemed more difficult with each passing minute. What had happened? Last night she seemed fine. Tired, yes, but not sick. She had eaten a sandwich and taken a shower before bed. Her face was clean and her eyes, though exhausted, seemed alert. The 20 minutes it took the doctor to arrive felt like 20 hours. When the doorbell rang, Rowan rushed to open the door. "Where's the patient?" Dr. Lowenthal asked, direct and professional. "In the bedroom. It's a girl." 8 years old. The doctor raised his eyebrows, surprised, but asked no questions. He followed Rowan to the guest room. The examination was thorough. Temperature, throat, lungs, reflexes. Nell remained semi-conscious, responding in monosyllables when the doctor spoke to her. "Well, Mr. Marlowe, it doesn't seem to be anything serious," the doctor finally said, putting his stethoscope back in his bag. "It's a case of physical exhaustion combined with malnutrition." Her body simply shut down. Malnutrition? Rowan felt a pang of guilt, but she ate well last night. "One meal doesn't solve weeks of poor nutrition," the doctor explained patiently. "But the fever is the body's response to stress. She needs rest, hydration, and regular meals, No heavy food for now. Start with soups, toast, light foods. He wrote a prescription. This fever reducer will help with the fever, and these vitamins are to replace what she's lost. If the fever doesn't come down in 24 hours, call me. The doctor paused, looking at Rowan with an unreadable expression. May I ask who this child is? I didn't know you had a daughter. I don't. Rowan felt the need to explain, but didn't know where to start. It's complicated. She has no one. I'm taking care of her temporarily. Doctor. Lowenthal nodded without asking any more questions. He was known for his discretion, one of the reasons Rowan had hired him. Well, she needs constant care for a few days. Do you have someone who can stay with her? Rowan hesitated. He had 3 important meetings scheduled for that day. The merger with West Tech depended on his presence at the negotiation. There were millions at stake. I'll stay with her, he said, surprising himself. I'll work from home today. After the doctor left, Rowan called Margaret. Cancel my appointments for today, all of them. Mr. Marlowe, but the meeting with West Tech, reschedule it. Say for Thursday. That's in 4 days. Exactly. There was a silence on the other end of the line. In 15 years, Rowan had never cancelled an important meeting, let alone requested 4 days off. Sir, is everything all right? Yes, it's just a domestic matter. He hung up before she could ask more questions. He returned to the room, where Nell was now sleeping more peacefully. He had given her the fever reducer, and her breathing already seemed less labored. He stared at her pale little face. So fragile, so vulnerable. How had she survived 2 weeks alone on the streets? A strange feeling spread through Rowan's chest. Concern, yes, but also something more. A kind of admiration for the strength of this child, and a dull anger at the world that allowed children like her to be left helpless. The next 4 days established an unlikely routine. Rowan worked from the next room, with the door open to hear if Nell called. Every 2 hours, he would stop to check her temperature, offer water or soup, and adjust her pillows. On the second day, the fever broke, and Nell started to become more alert. When he entered the room with a tray of soup, she was sitting up in bed, looking out the window. Hi, she said, her voice still weak. Hi. Rowan placed the tray on the nightstand. How are you feeling? Better, sorry for being a bother. That took him by surprise. An 8-year-old child apologizing for being sick. You're not being a bother, he said, trying to sound casual. You just need to rest to get well soon. Nell nodded and began to eat the soup slowly. Her hands were still trembling a little, and a few drops fell on the sheet. Sorry, she murmured, embarrassed. It's okay. Sheets can be washed. On the 3rd day, Nell was strong enough to get out of bed. Rowan found her in the hallway, leaning against the wall, trying to get to the living room. What are you doing? He asked, alarmed. You shouldn't be walking yet. I'm tired of lying down. She seemed determined, despite her paleness. Can I stay on the couch? He hesitated, but eventually agreed. He picked her up, surprised at how light she was, and carried her to the living room. She nestled into the Italian leather sofa, looking tiny against the dark upholstery. Stay put. Okay, Rowan said, adjusting a cushion behind her. Don't make any noise. I need to work. Okay. Nell pulled the blanket up to her chin. I'll be quiet. Rowan went back to his office, leaving the door open. Every few minutes, he found himself looking into the living room, checking to see if she was okay. Nell remained motionless, looking out the panoramic window that showed the entire city. You live so high up, she commented when he went to check on her. It looks like you can touch the clouds. He followed her gaze to the sky. He had never thought about it. Yeah, I guess so. On the 4th day, Nell was significantly better. The color had returned to her cheeks, and she could walk around the apartment without help. Rowan found her in the kitchen, trying to reach a glass from the cupboard. What do you want? He asked, taking a glass from the shelf. Just water. There's juice in the fridge. Her eyes lit up. Can I? Of course. He got the orange juice and poured it for her. He watched as she drank eagerly, a trickle of orange running down the corner of her mouth. Slowly, he said, handing her a napkin. No one's going to take it from you. She nodded but held the glass firmly in both hands, as if it were too precious to let go. Later that day, Rowan realized he needed to go back to the office. He couldn't postpone the meetings any longer, and he had dozens of urgent emails to answer, but he couldn't leave Nell alone. She was still weak. The solution came to him during breakfast. "I'll need to go to work tomorrow," he said, trying to sound casual. "You're better, but you still need to rest." Nell looked down at her plate. "I understand. I'll leave then." "No." The word came out louder than he intended. "I mean, you're not well enough to go. I was thinking you could stay here, but I need to work." "I can stay by myself," she said quickly. "I won't break anything, I promise." Rowan shook his head. "That's not it. I just need to be sure you'll be okay." He stood up and went to his office, returning with a sketchbook and a box of colored pencils. He had asked Margaret to buy them the day before. "Here. So you don't get bored." Nell looked at the supplies as if they were gold. "Is this for me?" "It is." He placed the sketchbook and pencils on the table. "You can draw while I'm away, but you have to promise you'll rest too." "I promise." She was already opening the box of pencils, admiring the colors. "So I'll draw beautiful things." When Rowan returned from work that evening, he found the house silent. For a moment, he felt a tightness in his chest, thinking Nell had left. But then he saw her, asleep on the couch, the sketchbook open beside her. He approached silently and looked at the drawing. It was a house with a large tree next to it. In front of the house, two figures, one small and one large, holding hands. Something inside him contracted. In the days that followed, they established a routine. Rowan went to work, and Nell stayed home, drawing and resting. He bought more books for her, simple games, puzzles, anything to keep her busy and quiet. "Don't make a mess," he would say before leaving. "And don't open the door for anyone." "Okay, Mr. Rowan." Sometimes he got annoyed by little things. A glass out of place, pencils scattered on the floor, crumbs on the coffee table. "Can't you be more careful?" he would ask, harsher than he intended. Nell always responded the same way. "I'm sorry. I'll clean it up." And she would, with such diligence that Rowan felt guilty for having complained. One morning, he found a drawing on the refrigerator door, held by a magnet. It was a portrait of him, in a suit and tie, his hair perfectly combed. Underneath, in careful letters, it read, "Thank you for taking care of me." On another occasion, he found a folded note on his desk. Inside, a drawing of colorful flowers and the message, "Have a good day." Small gestures that he pretended to ignore, although his eyes returned to the drawings more often than he would like to admit. One evening, coming home late from work, Rowan found Nell asleep on the living room couch. The television was still on, with the volume almost at a minimum. She had the sketchbook on her lap and a pencil fallen on the floor. He stood there, watching her. She looked so small against the large, dark leather sofa, so fragile. For a moment, he almost smiled. But then he hardened his expression and cleared his throat loudly. "Nell, wake up. It's late." She opened her eyes slowly, blinking several times until she focused on his face. "Hi, Mr. Rowan." Her voice was hoarse with sleep. "I was waiting for you." "You shouldn't have. It's past 10. His voice came out colder than he intended, and the TV was left on. "That wastes energy." Nell sat up on the couch, rubbing her eyes. "I'm sorry, I'll turn it off." Rowan sighed, picking up the remote and turning it off himself. "Go to bed. It's too late for children to be awake." Nell gathered her pencils and sketchbook. But before leaving the room, she stopped and looked at him. "You know something, Mr. Rowan." "What?" "I think you have a heart of ice." She said it without malice, as if stating a simple fact. "But that's okay. Ice melts one day." He was left speechless, watching her walk down the hall to the guest room. Her words hit him in a way he hadn't expected. A heart of ice. Is that how she saw him? He poured himself a drink and went out to the apartment balcony. The city sparkled below, thousands of lights like earthly stars. He stood there for a long time, thinking about what Nell had said. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had frozen his heart a long time ago, as a form of protection against life's disappointments and betrayals. Business was simpler when you didn't let emotions interfere. But now there was a child in his house. A child who saw through him with disconcerting clarity. Before going to bed, Rowan stopped at the door of Nell's room. It was ajar. He pushed it gently and saw that she was sleeping peacefully, hugging her pillow. On the nightstand, there was a new drawing. It was him in a suit, as always. But there was something different about this portrait. In place of a heart, she had drawn an ice cube. But the ice had a small drop trickling down one side, beginning to melt. Rowan picked up the drawing and looked at it for a long moment. Then, without quite understanding why, he folded it carefully and put it in the drawer of his bedside table. He didn't know what to do with it. With the drawing, with the girl, with the strange feeling growing inside him. He only knew that, perhaps, his heart wasn't made entirely of ice, after all. The days turned into weeks without Rowan noticing. Nell's presence in his apartment, which was supposed to be temporary, was beginning to feel strangely natural, as if the empty place next to him at the breakfast table had always been destined to be filled by an 8-year-old girl with messy brown hair. "More juice, Mr. Rowan?" Nell asked, holding the pitcher with both hands so as not to spill. "Thank you." He held out his glass, watching as she bit her lip in concentration while pouring the juice, careful not to spill a single drop. Every morning, she would wake up before him and wait patiently in the kitchen. When Rowan appeared, already dressed for work, he would find the table set, 2 plates, 2 glasses, napkins folded with childish precision. "Jaya, good morning, Mr. Rowan," she would always say, with a smile that seemed too big for her small face. "Did you sleep well?" He would respond with nods or monosyllables, unable to match that morning enthusiasm. But he noticed that, somehow, he was already looking forward to that part of the day. In the evenings, when he returned from work, she would run to the door like a small hurricane. "You're here. You took a long time today." There was no accusation in her voice, just the sincere observation that she had missed him. Nell would take his briefcase, place it carefully on the coffee table, and then start recounting her day. The drawings she had made, the TV show she had watched, the bird she had seen on the window. "And then it flew like this, see?" She would open her arms and spin around the room, imitating the flight. "Just like in your name, Rowan. Here it sounds like a bird's name." He almost smiled. Almost. During dinner, which they now regularly ordered for delivery, Rowan had never been one for cooking, Nell would set the table without him needing to ask. She would sit up straight in her chair, imitating his posture, and use her napkin with a comical formality for someone so small. "Were you always rich?" she asked one night, between a forkful of pasta and another. The question took him by surprise. "Why do you want to know?" "Because you look like you were born this way, all proper and organized." She shrugged. "Like in the movies?" "No." Rowan cut a piece of chicken with precision. "I grew up in a very simple neighborhood. Really." Her eyes widened. "Like me." "Maybe not exactly like you." He hesitated. "But it wasn't. This." He gestured vaguely at the luxurious apartment around them. "And how did you get rich?" "By working." "Is that all?" Nell seemed disappointed with the simple answer. "By working a lot," Rowan completed, surprised at himself for extending the conversation. "And by learning how money works." Nell nodded thoughtfully, as if absorbing a great life lesson. Then, without transition, she started talking about a cartoon she had watched that afternoon. That's how Rowan discovered that she liked stories about talking animals, that her favorite ice cream was strawberry, and that she was afraid of thunder. Information he hadn't asked for, but that, somehow, he had been storing away. One Saturday morning, Rowan was drinking coffee on the balcony when Nell appeared beside him, silent as a cat. "Can I stay here too?" He nodded, and she settled into the chair next to him, her legs dangling in the air. They were silent for a few minutes, watching the city below. It was strange how the silence with her didn't feel awkward. "It's pretty, isn't it?" Nell commented finally. "It looks like a bunch of toys down there." Rowan looked at the urban landscape. He had never thought of it that way. "I guess so." "Do you like living up here, far away from everyone?" The question was simple, but it touched on something deep. Why had he chosen to live so isolated, so above the world? "I like the quiet," he answered after a moment. "Me too. Nell hugged her knees. Yeah, but sometimes it's nice to have someone around, right? He didn't answer, but something in that innocent observation made him think. Before Nell, his apartment was impeccable, silent, and empty. Now there were drawings on the fridge, small shoes in the hallway, occasional laughter. It was less perfect, but strangely more livable. That afternoon, while working in his office, he found a drawing carefully placed among his documents. It showed two figures on the apartment balcony. The larger one, with dark hair and a suit, was holding a cup. The smaller one, in a red dress, was sitting beside him. Both were looking at a blue sky full of colorful birds. Rowan looked at the drawing for longer than he intended. There was something disturbing, and at the same time moving in the way she portrayed them, together as a unit. That night, after dinner, Nell appeared at the office door with her sketchbook. "Mr. Rowan, can I stay here while you work? I promise not to make any noise." His first reaction was to refuse. His office was his sanctuary, the place where he needed total concentration. But something in her hopeful gaze made him hesitate. "All right, but absolute silence." Nell tiptoed in, as if the floor were made of glass, and settled on the small sofa in the corner of the room. She opened her sketchbook and began to draw, casting occasional glances at him. Rowan tried to ignore her and get back to work, but her presence, though silent, filled the space in a way he wasn't used to. It wasn't bad, just different. After an hour, he realized she had fallen asleep, the sketchbook still open on her lap, a pencil loose between her fingers. He stood up and approached silently. In the sketchbook, there was a new drawing. Him sitting at his desk, working. But in this drawing, unlike in reality, he was smiling. Something moved inside Rowan's chest. He took a light blanket he kept in the office and carefully covered Nell. She stirred in her sleep, but didn't wake up. He returned to his desk, but couldn't concentrate anymore. He watched the sleeping girl and thought about how his life had changed in the last few weeks, how his apartment, once so silent and organized, now had life, how his mornings and evenings, once so predictable, now had little surprises, and how he, who had always valued solitude and independence, was now beginning to feel a strange comfort in the presence of this child. In the days that followed, Nell continued to leave little signs of her presence throughout the apartment. A drawing on the refrigerator door, a "Have a good day" note in his briefcase, a paper flower on top of his bedside table. They were simple gestures, but they had a deep and unexpected effect. As if she were, slowly and gently, melting something that had long been frozen inside him. One evening, when Rowan arrived from work, he found Nell in the kitchen, standing on a stool, setting the table for dinner. "What are you doing?" he asked, surprised to see her so at ease. "Setting the table," she replied simply. "I saw a show on TV that taught me how... Look, the forks go on the left side." She had placed 2 candles in the center of the table and folded the napkins into elaborate, albeit slightly crooked, shapes. "Is it a special dinner?" Rowan asked, confused. "Yes," Nell smiled, proud. "It's been a month since I got here. It's our Annie something. Anniversary. That's it. 1-month anniversary." Rowan was speechless. He hadn't realized it had already been a month that he had been sheltering a strange child in his home, a month that his routine and organized life had been turned upside down, a month that, for the first time in years, his apartment didn't just feel like a place to sleep, but a home. "Can we order pizza?" Nell asked, hopeful. "Please." "All right." Rowan heard himself agree, although he didn't usually eat pizza. Just this once. The smile she gave in response was so radiant that, for a moment, he felt something warm and unfamiliar spread through his chest. Later, after Nell had gone to sleep, Rowan stood in the dark living room for a long time. The truth he didn't want to admit was that her presence in his life, in which should have been a disruption, a problem to be solved, was becoming a comfort, a point of light in days that were previously just efficient but empty. When he finally went to bed, he found a new drawing on his pillow. In it, the same 2 figures from previous drawings. Him and Nell were sitting at the kitchen table, with 2 lit candles between them. Above, in colorful letters, was written, "Happy 1 month." Rowan put the drawing in his bedside table drawer, along with the others he had been collecting without realizing it. Something was happening, something for which he had no name or defense, something that, for the first time in a long time, he didn't want to control or understand, just feel. On Monday morning, Rowan woke up before the alarm went off. He lay there looking at the ceiling, his mind strangely clear. Something had changed during the night. A decision had formed as he slept, like water slowly freezing until it becomes solid. He was getting too involved, letting himself be carried away by a situation that should never have happened. He got up and dressed with meticulous care, choosing his most formal suit, as if the armor of fine fabric could protect him from his own feelings. In the mirror, his face looked the same as always, controlled, confident, distant. But his eyes told a different story. Nell was already in the kitchen when he arrived, setting the breakfast table as she had done every day for the past few weeks. "Good morning, Mr. Rowan." Her smile was as radiant as ever. "I made toast. Do you want it with jam or butter?" "I don't have time for breakfast today." His voice came out colder than he intended. "I have important meetings." Nell's smile wavered for an instant, but she quickly recovered. "That's okay. Can I make you a sandwich to go?" "No need." He picked up his briefcase and walked to the door. He felt her eyes following him, confused by the sudden change in behavior. "I'll be back later. Behave." In the elevator, he took several deep breaths. It was the right thing to do. The situation had gone too far. Nell was not his responsibility. She never had been. There was an entire system created to deal with children like her. Trained professionals, families willing to adopt. He was just, what? A stranger who had found her by chance, a businessman with no qualifications whatsoever to raise a child. In his office, he closed the door and made the call he had been putting off for too long. "Child and Family Services, good morning." "Good morning. My name is Rowan Marlowe. I have a child under my care, an 8-year-old girl named Nell." The woman on the other end of the line was silent for a moment, probably surprised by the unusual situation. "Are you related to her, sir?" "No, she lost her parents in a fire. She was living on the streets when I found her." "And how long has she been with you, sir?" Rowan hesitated. "Almost 6 weeks." He heard the sound of keys being pressed on the other end of the line. The woman was probably checking if there was a missing child report that matched the description. "Mr. Marlowe, you should have contacted us immediately. Harboring a minor without legal authorization is—" "I know." He cut her off, impatient. "I'm calling now. She's with me. She's well-fed and healthy. But I think it's time to resolve this." More sounds of typing. The woman's voice returned, now more professional. "I'm going to forward your case to the social worker on duty. She will contact you to schedule a visit later today." "How long until—" Rowan stopped, not knowing how to phrase the question. "Until the child is placed in a shelter or foster home. It depends on the assessment. It could be immediate or take a few days." Something in Rowan's chest contracted painfully, but he ignored the sensation. "I understand. Thank you." He hung up and stared out the window, watching the city below. Tiny people moving like ants, each with their own life, their own problems, their own difficult decisions. It was the right thing to do. It was the correct procedure. So why did he feel like he was making a terrible mistake? The phone rang less than an hour later. It was the social worker, a woman named Karen Porter. A firm voice, out straight to the point. "Can we do the visit today at 4 in the afternoon, Mr. Marlowe?" "Yes, I'll be home." "Will the girl be present?" "Yes." A pause. "She doesn't know you're coming." "I see." The voice on the other end softened a bit. "In these cases, it's best to be honest with the child. Prepare her for the transition." Transition? Such a clean technical word for what was about to happen. "I'll do that." But when he got home at lunchtime, he couldn't say anything. Nell was in the living room, drawing as always, and ran to greet him at the door, surprised and happy to see him so early. "You came home for lunch today?" "That's so cool." "Yes, He hesitated. The words stuck in his throat. "I just came to get some documents." Her smile faded a little. "Oh, are you going back to work then?" "I'll be leaving early today. I'll be back at 4. Can I make a special drawing for when you get back?" Rowan felt something break inside him. Of course. During the afternoon, he couldn't concentrate on anything. The numbers on the spreadsheets danced before his eyes. The words in the documents lost their meaning. All he could think about was what would happen at 4 o'clock. When he got home at 3:45, he found Nell tidying up the living room. She had organized all her drawings into a neat pile on the coffee table and was cleaning up the scattered colored pencils. "I'm making everything nice and tidy so you won't complain," she explained, proud. Rowan looked at the apartment. In recent days, there were signs of her presence everywhere. A small jacket hanging on a chair, a colorful cup in the sink, a pair of small slippers next to the sofa. Things he had bought for her, little by little, without realizing he was creating a permanent space for her in his life. "Nell." He sat on the sofa, trying to find the right words. "We need to talk." She stopped what she was doing, suddenly serious. There was a perception beyond her years in those eyes. "Did something bad happen, Mr. Rowan?" "No, it's not that." He swallowed hard. "It's just, someone is coming over today. A social worker." "What's a social worker?" "It's someone who helps children find a place to live. Her permanent home." Nell became very quiet, absorbing the information. After a moment, she asked in a low voice, "You don't want me to live here anymore?" The direct question caught him off guard. There was no way to soften the truth. "Nell, this was always temporary. I said that from the beginning. This isn't a suitable place for a child. You need a real family. People who know how to take care of you properly. Don't you take good care of me?" Her voice was small, hurt. "That's not it. Rowan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with his own inability to explain. "I don't know how to be a father, Nell. I don't know how to take care of a child long term. You deserve more than I can offer." She didn't answer. She just looked at her own feet, swinging slightly in the air. The doorbell rang at 4 o'clock sharp. Karen Porter was a middle-aged woman with short grey hair and kind but appraising eyes. She entered the apartment with the efficiency of someone who had been doing this for decades. "Good afternoon, Mr. Marlowe. And you must be Nell." The girl nodded shyly without getting closer. "I'll need to speak with both of you, first together and then separately. And I also need to see where Nell has been sleeping, what she's been eating, that sort of thing." Rowan nodded, tense. "Of course. Make yourself at home." The social worker spent the next hour meticulously assessing the apartment. She checked the refrigerator, well stocked. Nell's room, adequate, though without childlike decor. The bathroom, clean, appropriate hygiene products for children. Then, she talked with Nell alone in the room, while Rowan waited in the living room, unable to concentrate on anything. When they came out, Nell's eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. "Mr. Marlowe, can we speak privately?" Karen asked, indicating the kitchen. He followed her, closing the door behind him. "Well, I must say I'm surprised," the social worker began. "The situation is unconventional, but Nell seems well cared for. Healthy, clean, fed. She speaks very highly of you." Rowan didn't know what to say. "However," Karen continued, "as you yourself pointed out, this is not a permanent situation. Nell needs stability, a family that can commit to her long term." "I understand. I have a spot available in a very good foster home. The Patterson family has cared for several children in similar situations. They are experienced and loving." When does she need to go?" Karen consulted her watch. "I can take her right now if everything is ready. Does she have any luggage?" Luggage. The word sounded strange. What did Nell have to take? A few clothes he had bought, the drawings, the sketchbook, nothing else. "I'll help her pack her things." When he returned to the living room, he found Nell sitting on the sofa, very still, her hands folded in her lap. She seemed smaller somehow, as if she had shrunk in the last hour. "Nell, Mrs. Porter is going to take you to meet a nice family. They'll take care of you for a while until they find a permanent home." She nodded without looking at him. "Let's get your things, okay?" In the bedroom, Rowan grabbed the small suitcase he had bought weeks ago when he realized Nell would need a place to keep her clothes. He began to place the carefully folded items inside, while she watched in silence. "You can take all your drawings. he said, trying to sound cheerful. "And the colored pencils, too. I'm sure they'll like your drawings as much as—" His voice trailed off. "As much as you do," Nell completed, finally looking at him. "Yeah." She walked to the dresser and picked up a drawing that was hidden in the drawer. It was different from the others, more elaborate, with more details. It showed the two of them sitting on the sofa, reading a book together. Something they had done only once, but that she had clearly kept in her memory. "This is for you to keep," she said, holding out the paper. "To remember me by." Rowan took the drawing, feeling his throat tighten painfully. "Thank you." Back in the living room, Karen Porter was waiting patiently, her briefcase now full of notes. Nell stood with the small suitcase in one hand and the box of colored pencils in the other. "Are we ready?" the social worker asked. Nell nodded, but didn't move. She kept looking at Rowan with an intensity that made him look away. "Mr. Rowan?" "Yes, Nell." She dropped the suitcase and the box, and before he could react, she ran and hugged him tightly. Her small arms could barely circle his waist, but the grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you for everything," she whispered against the fabric of his shirt. "It was nice living with you." Something broke inside Rowan. He felt as if he were falling from a very high place, with nothing to hold on to. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Nell pulled away, picked up her things, and walked to Karen Porter, who was waiting with a gentle smile. "Let's go, dear." Rowan walked them to the door, moving like an automaton. When the social worker held out her hand to say goodbye, he shook it mechanically. "We'll be in touch to update you on her situation if you'd like." "Yes, please." And then they were leaving. Nell looked back one last time, her small face serious and composed, no tears. She gave a brief wave and disappeared down the hallway. The door closed with a soft click that seemed to echo in the now empty apartment. Rowan stood there for a long time, unable to move. The drawing was still in his hand, slightly crumpled where his fingers gripped it too tightly. Finally, he walked to the window and looked down at the street below. He saw Karen Porter and Nell leave the building, two tiny figures seen from the 30th floor. The social worker opened the door of a grey car, and Nell got in. A moment later, the car drove off, blending into the city traffic. And just like that, she was gone. Rowan turned back to the silent apartment. Everything was exactly as it was before Nell arrived. Elegant, organized, impersonal. Except now there were ghosts everywhere. The sound of laughter where there had only been silence, the memory of small footsteps in the hallway, colorful drawings where there were now only white walls. He sat on the sofa and looked at the drawing in his hands. Him and Nell together, sharing a simple moment of reading. A moment that, at the time, seemed ordinary, even annoying in its interruption of his routine. Now it seemed precious. A deep unease settled in his chest, something for which he had no name. It wasn't just guilt or regret. It was a sense of loss, as if something vital had been torn from him, something he didn't know he needed until it was no longer there. A week, 7 days since Nell had left, 7 days that Rowan had spent pretending that everything was fine. On the first day, he convinced himself he had done the right thing. He went back to work, immersed himself in meetings. When he got home, the silence felt like a relief. No constant questions, just order and peace. On the second day, he found himself looking at the clock at 5 in the afternoon, feeling a restlessness. It was the time he usually left to hear Nell recount her day. On the third day, he opened the fridge and saw a half-empty carton of orange juice. Her favorite. On the fourth day, he passed by the department store and saw a small dress, red with white polka dots. He stopped, imagining how Nell would look in it. On the fifth day, Margaret asked if he was feeling well. "You look tired, sir," she said. Rowan replied that he was great. A lie. On the sixth day, Sunday, the apartment felt too big, too empty. And now, on the seventh day, Rowan finally stopped pretending. The apartment was immaculate after the cleaning crew's visit, everything exactly as it was before Nell appeared in his life. And yet, it wasn't the same. In the bottom drawer of the guest room dresser, he found a sketchbook she had forgotten. The last page showed an unfinished drawing, the beginning of his profile, looking out the window, just a few lines traced with childish care. Next to the sketchbook, 2 colored pencils, one blue and one red, and a small star-shaped eraser. In the kitchen, a yellow mug with a sunflower design remained in the cupboard. Nell's favorite mug, which he had bought when he realized she always tried to use that particular one. "It matches your smile," he had said, and she smiled even wider. In the office, a pile of drawings carefully stored in the top drawer, drawings he hadn't had the heart to throw away. There was their story. The first one, showing 2 figures holding hands, the one of the heart of ice beginning to melt, the one celebrating their 1 month together. The phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. "Mr. Marlowe, this is Karen Porter from Child and Family Services. Did something happen to Nell?" "No, she's fine. I'm just calling to give you an update. Nell is adjusting to the Pattersons' home." "And how is she?" There was a hesitation. "Physically, great. Emotionally, she's quiet, according to the reports. She doesn't talk much. Quiet." Nell, who always had a story to tell, an observation to make, a question to launch into the universe. "Quiet. Well, I also wanted to inform you that we are looking for a permanent family for her. There are a few promising possibilities." "Can I visit her?" The question came out before he could stop himself. "We normally don't recommend visits during the transition period. Maybe in a few weeks, when she's more settled. And if she's placed for permanent adoption?" The decision to allow contact with people from her past will be at the discretion of the new family. The reality of those words hit him like a punch. In a few weeks, he might never see Nell again. "Thank you for the information, Mrs. Porter." He hung up the phone and sat in silence, looking at the drawings spread out before him. The last one Nell had given him, the one of them reading together, seemed to stare back at him, accusingly. It was then that the truth finally hit him, clear as sunrise. It wasn't just guilt he felt. It wasn't just a vague regret. It was love. Sometime between finding a hungry girl rummaging through the trash and watching her leave with a tiny suitcase, he had grown attached. No, more than that. He had begun to love her as if she were his own daughter. And now that she was gone, there was a void in his chest that nothing seemed to fill. The apartment was no longer just silent, it was mute. It was no longer just organized, it was sterile. It wasn't a home, it was just a place to exist. Rowan stood up abruptly. He picked up the phone and dialed his secretary's number. "Margaret, cancel all my appointments for tomorrow, and for the day after tomorrow as well. Mr. Marlowe, but the board meeting, cancel everything. I have an urgent personal matter to attend to." He hung up before she could protest. Then he took the drawings, the unfinished sketchbook, the pencils and the yellow mug, and carried them to the bedroom, placing them carefully on the bed that had been Nell's. The decision was made, clear, definitive, irrevocable. He was going to get her. He was going to bring her back. Not as a temporary solution, but forever, as his daughter. How had it taken him so long to see the obvious, that this girl, who had entered his life by accident, had become as essential as the air he breathed? For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time in his life, Rowan knew exactly what he wanted. And for the first time, it had nothing to do with business, success, or money. It had to do with a smile that lit up a small face, with colorful drawings and a yellow mug with sunflowers. It had to do with the empty space in his heart that only a certain 8-year-old girl could fill. Tomorrow, he would bring her home. The Patterson foster home was in a quiet residential neighborhood, with tree-lined sidewalks and well-kept houses. Rowan parked his car across the street and stared at the yellow 2-story building. It looked like a pleasant place, with swings in the front yard and colorful curtains in the windows, a place where children could be happy. So why did his heart ache so much? He took a deep breath, grabbed the folder with documents from the passenger seat and got out of the car. The walk to the front door had never seemed so long. In his mind, he rehearsed for the 1,000th time what he would say, the words he had prepared during a sleepless night. Nothing seemed adequate. A middle-aged woman answered the door. Gray hair tied in a bun, a kind face marked by expression lines. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm Rowan Marlowe. I called earlier." "Ah, yes, the gentleman who took care of Nell for a while." She examined him with curiosity. "Please, come in." The house inside was exactly as Rowan had imagined, cozy with worn sofas, toys organized in colorful boxes, and the smell of freshly baked cookies. He could hear children's voices coming from the backyard. "The children are playing outside," Mrs. Patterson explained, "except for Nell. She prefers to be alone most of the time." A tightness in his chest. Nell, too, was pure energy and curiosity, preferring isolation. "Where is she?" "In the activity room. This way." She led him down a hallway decorated with framed children's drawings to a half-open door. Through the crack, Rowan saw a sunny room with low tables, bookshelves, and art supplies. And there, sitting alone in a corner, was Nell. She was wearing the same blue dress she had left in Moi, now paired with a white headband he had never seen before. She was hunched over a piece of paper, drawing with concentration, her brown curls falling over her face. From where he stood, Rowan couldn't see the drawing, but he noticed she was using mostly shades of grey and black, none of the vibrant colors that used to fill her work. "Nell has impressive artistic talents," Mrs. Patterson commented in a low voice, "but her drawings here have been, well, less cheerful than we expected. May I speak with her alone?" The woman hesitated. "We don't normally allow it, but considering the circumstances, 5 minutes, okay? I'll be right there in the kitchen." When Mrs. Patterson stepped away, Rowan stood at the door, unable to move. How could the simple sight of a small child drawing make him so vulnerable? He who negotiated millions without blinking, who faced administrative boards and fierce competitors without fear. Finally, he knocked lightly on the door. Nell looked up. For an instant, her face remained neutral, as if she didn't recognize him. Then, her eyes widened, bright with surprise. "Mr. Rowan." Her small, hesitant voice was like an arrow through his heart. "Hi, Nell." She placed the pencil on the table carefully, as if afraid that a sudden move would make her realize she was imagining things. "You came to visit me." Rowan entered the room and approached slowly. When he got close enough, he saw what she was drawing. Their apartment. The view from the balcony, the kitchen table, the living room sofa. Memories in black and white. "May I sit?" Nell nodded, still looking stunned. Rowan pulled up a child-sized chair, feeling awkward in it, his knees almost at his chest. In other circumstances, the scene would be comical. "How are you?" "Fine." The automatic reply sounded empty. "The Pattersons are nice. There are other kids here. And lots of colored pencils." "That's good." A silence fell between them, as thick as fog. Rowan realized that all the rehearsed words had vanished from his mind. "Mrs. Karen said I'm going to meet families soon," Nell said suddenly, looking at the unfinished drawing. "Families that might want to adopt me." "And how do you feel about that?" She shrugged, a resigned gesture. "It's okay, I guess. Better than being alone, right?" The simplicity of that statement made something break inside Rowan. All the composure he had maintained during the drive there, all the facade of control, collapsed like a house of cards. "Nell, His voice failed him. He took a deep breath and tried again. "I made a terrible mistake." She looked up, confused. "I should never have let you leave my house." The words began to flow, urgent, desperate. "It was the stupidest decision I've ever made in my life. And trust me, I've made a lot of stupid decisions." A small smile began to form on Nell's lips. "I thought I was doing what was best for you," he continued, unable to stop now. "I thought you deserved a real family, not a man who barely knew how to take care of himself, let alone a child. But then you left and—" His voice failed again. "And what?" Nell asked, almost in a whisper. And the house became empty. Not just quiet, but empty. As if all the light, all the color had been taken away. Rowan swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. "I found your drawings, your mug, the unfinished sketchbook, and I realized it wasn't just the house that was empty. It was me." Nell's eyes filled with tears, but she kept smiling. "Nell, I came here to ask for your forgiveness, and to ask you if—" He paused, gathering the courage for the most important question he would ever ask in his life. "If you would accept me as your father, not temporarily, not until we find a better solution, but forever, a family, the two of us." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Rowan could hear his own heart beating in his ears, the fear making his stomach contract painfully. Then, without warning, Nell got up from her chair, walked around the table, and stood in front of him. Her eyes, now overflowing with tears, shone with a joy he feared he would never see again. "I knew it," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I knew that icy heart would melt one day." And before he could react, she threw herself into his arms, hugging him with all the strength her small body possessed. Rowan wrapped his arms around her, feeling the tears he had held back for so long finally escape. He cried like he hadn't cried since childhood, without shame, without reservation. He cried for the lost time, for the loneliness of both of them, for the second chance he didn't deserve, but was determined to honor. "Is that a yes?" he asked, when he could finally speak. Nell pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, her small hands holding his face. "Of course, it's a yes, silly." The door opened, and Mrs. Patterson appeared, looking at the scene with a mixture of surprise and emotion. "Is everything all right in here?" Rowan stood up, holding Nell's hand. "Yes. In fact, everything is great." "Mrs. Patterson, I came to get Nell. I want to adopt her." The woman's eyes widened. "Mr. Marlowe, things don't work like that. There are procedures, evaluations, waiting periods. I know." He held up the folder he had brought. "I have all the initial forms filled out here. I spoke with Karen Porter this morning. She explained the whole process to me. I know it will take time, but I want to start right now. And in the meantime, I request that Nell be returned to my custody." Mrs. Patterson looked perplexed. This is highly unusual." "Please," Nell intervened, her voice small but determined. "I want to go home with my dad." "My dad?" The words hit Rowan like a ray of sunshine after an endless storm. 2 hours, dozens of phone calls, and a surprise visit from Karen Porter later. They were in the car, heading home. Nell had a small suitcase in the back seat, larger than when she had left, thanks to some extra clothes and toys the Pattersons kindly allowed her to take. The process would be long, Karen had warned. There would be interviews, psychological evaluations, home visits, background checks, financial analyses. The bureaucracy to turn a single, inexperienced bachelor into the legal adoptive father of a child was monumental. "It will be worth it," Rowan had said, with a certainty he had never felt before. Now, driving back to the apartment, he watched Nell in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window, absorbing the city with renewed eyes, as if everything were extraordinary. Every few minutes, she would turn to him and smile, as if to make sure it was real, that she wasn't dreaming. "Mr. Rowan." "Yes? Can I just call you Dad now?" Something warm and luminous spread through his chest. "Of course you can." "Dad." She tested the word, savoring it. "Dad, Dad." Rowan laughed, a sound so genuine and relaxed that he almost didn't recognize it as his own. "We have to redecorate your room," he said as they entered the building's elevator. "That guest room is too boring for an 8-year-old girl. Can I pick the color?" "Of course." "Pink? No. Blue? No. Purple? Purple with stars?" "Purple with stars it is." When the apartment door opened, Nell ran inside, inspecting every corner as if to make sure nothing had changed. She stopped in the living room, looking at the coffee table where Rowan had left the unfinished sketchbook and pencils. "You kept it. I kept everything." He put her suitcase on the floor. "Your drawings, your pencils, even that horrible yellow mug." "It's not horrible," Nell protested, laughing. "It's pretty, if you say so." The following months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The apartment was gradually transformed. Nell's room got purple walls with hand-painted silver stars, shelves for books, a desk for drawing. The living room now had colorful cushions on the sofa and toys in a basket in the corner. The kitchen displayed drawings held to the fridge with fruit-shaped magnets. The adoption process moved forward, albeit slowly. Rowan faced interviews where he had to explain why a single, workaholic executive wanted to adopt a child. He went through psychological evaluations where he discussed his own childhood, his expectations as a father, his fears and hopes. He received surprise visits from social workers who wanted to see the dynamic between him and Nell in their daily life. And with every step, every obstacle, every moment of doubt. He just had to look at Nell to know that he would do it all over again. 1,000 times, if necessary. She blossomed like a plant finally placed in the sun after a long time in the shade. Her drawings became colorful and vibrant again. She started making friends at her new school. She sang in the shower, danced in the living room, asked impossible to answer questions during dinner, and Rowan, to his own surprise, was also changing. The man who lived for work now left earlier to pick up his daughter from school. The executive who never missed an important meeting now attended school recitals in the front row, applauding as if he were at the best show on Broadway. His employees noticed the difference. "You seem happier, sir," Margaret commented one day. "Lighter." And he was. The armor of ice he had built around himself over the years was melting piece by piece. One evening, 6 months after Nell's return, they were in the living room. She was drawing, concentrated, while he reviewed some documents. It was a common domestic scene, almost banal in its simplicity, but for Rowan, every moment like this was a small miracle. "I'm done," Nell announced, holding up the paper. "I want to see." It was the most elaborate drawing she had ever made, the two of them in the park they had finally visited last weekend, holding hands under a tree laden with pink blossoms. The sky was an impossible blue, and there were birds flying in formation. But what made Rowan's heart stop was what was written in the bottom corner of the drawing in careful, colorful letters: "Nell Marlowe and her dad." "Nell Marlowe," he read aloud, testing how it sounded. "It's pretty, isn't it?" She smiled, that smile that lit up the whole world. "It suits me." Rowan pulled her into a hug, feeling a happiness so complete, so absolute, that there were no words to describe it. "It suits you perfectly," he whispered against her hair. "Perfectly." 8 months later, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, the 30th floor apartment was unrecognizable. Anyone who saw it now, with colorful cushions scattered on the sofa, framed drawings on the walls, and a pair of children's sneakers thrown in the hallway, would never imagine that it had once been the sterile, silent refuge of a lonely man. The kitchen, once pristine with its never-used stainless steel appliances, now showed clear signs of daily use. Fruit magnets on the fridge holding drawings and shopping lists, a growing collection of colorful mugs, and on the wall, a calendar full of notes about school meetings, swimming lessons, and doctor's appointments. In the living room, the Persian rug that was once just a decorative item now housed a small city of building blocks. The bookshelf, which once displayed only business books organized by height, now shared space with children's volumes, dolls, and board games. It was a home, a real home. Rowan entered the kitchen, his hair still damp from the shower, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, a look that, a few months ago, he would have considered unthinkable for himself. "Nell? Breakfast is ready? Coming, Dad?" "Dad." The word still made his heart do a little leap, even after all these months. It was like magic, a spell that transformed the man he was into the man he wanted to be. Nell came running in, barefoot, wearing pajamas with unicorn prints that she had chosen on their last trip to the mall. Her brown hair was tied in a messy braid she had tried to do herself. "I made pancakes," Rowan said, placing a plate in front of her. "They're with strawberries, just the way you like." "Thanks." She attacked the food with enthusiasm, swinging her legs under the table. "Can we go to the park later? Emma's going to be there with her new puppy." "Of course. But first, you need to clean up that mess of blocks in the living room." Nell made a comical face. "But Dad, it's a whole city. It'll take forever to take it apart." "Cities are built and dismantled," he replied, pouring himself some coffee. "That's how urban development works," she laughed, that laugh that was like music. "You talk like a book sometimes." "A very interesting book, I hope." "Yes," she nodded seriously. "One of those with a hardcover and gold letters." Rowan smiled, watching her eat. It still surprised him sometimes, this ability Nell had to see things in him that he didn't even notice himself, as if, somehow, she saw him better than anyone ever had. The adoption was still in process, although everything indicated it would be finalized in the coming months. The judge had been impressed with the changes in Rowan's life, and Karen Porter's reports were extremely positive. "I've never seen such a successful adjustment," she had commented on her last follow-up visit. At the company, everyone had noticed the transformation. The demanding, inflexible boss now delegated more, left on time, and, most surprisingly, occasionally smiled. Margaret, who had worked with him for over 15 years, commented that she had never seen him so human. "It's the Nell effect," he replied simply. After breakfast, as promised, Nell cleaned up the blocks, with some reluctant help from Rowan, who was eventually convinced to save at least the main building from complete demolition. They went to the park, where Nell and Emma, her best friend from school, ran after the new Labrador puppy while Rowan chatted with other parents. This was also new: casual friendships, conversations about teachers and extracurricular activities, swapping tips on how to deal with nightmares and picky eating. A whole world he didn't even know existed until Nell entered his life. When they returned home in the afternoon, exhausted and happy, Rowan suggested they read a little before dinner, a ritual they had established in the first few months together and which they both loved. Nell went to get the current book, a story about a girl who discovers a secret door to another world, while Rowan settled on the sofa. When she returned, instead of sitting next to him as she usually did, Nell snuggled up against his body, resting her head on his shoulder. The gesture was so natural, so full of trust, that for a moment Rowan couldn't breathe. "You can start chapter 7, she said, opening the book to the marked page. "It's where the girl finds the unicorn." Rowan cleared his throat, found the page, and began to read. His voice, which had once been used only to give orders and close deals, now rose and fell with the story, creating different voices for each character, making Nell laugh at the right moments. Outside, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reflected in the windows of the other buildings. The city was preparing for the night, lights turning on one by one, like earthly stars. When they finished the chapter, Nell didn't ask to continue as she usually did. Instead, she stayed quiet, looking out the window at the spectacle of the sunset. "I like our home," she said finally, her voice small and dreamy. Rowan followed her gaze, seeing the apartment through her eyes. No longer an impersonal space decorated by professionals, but a home created by them, together. Every toy out of place, every drawing on the wall and every colorful cushion, everything told their story. "Now it's yours," he replied, kissing the top of her head. "And so am I." Nell smiled, that smile that had melted his heart of ice on that first day in the lobby of Rowan Industries. A smile that he now knew would continue to melt his heart every day for the rest of his life. "Forever?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Forever," he confirmed. And it was true. The life Rowan had planned for himself, full of financial success and empty of real connections, had been completely rewritten by a girl who had the courage to ask for work in exchange for food, who had looked at a man everyone considered cold and calculating and seen something that not even he knew existed. As the daylight faded and the first stars appeared in the sky, father and daughter remained embraced on the sofa, in silence. Not the oppressive silence of before, but a comfortable silence, full of all the words that didn't need to be said. Outside, the city continued its frantic pace. Cars honking, people rushing, deals being closed. The world that had once been Rowan Marlowe's entire universe. But here, on the 30th floor, in an apartment once empty and now overflowing with life, there was a different world. A world created by colorful drawings left on the fridge, by laughter during dinner, by stories read aloud, by fears shared in the middle of the night, by whispered advice, by tight hugs, by "Good morning, Dad," and "Good night, my little one." A world that Rowan never knew he wanted until he found it. A world that he now knew was the only one that truly mattered. An unexpected family. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones.